Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, and today we are going to be doing our 3 segments as per usual, and we're going to have a 4th segment as well, so please stick around till I reveal what that segment is going to be. So first, in the first segment, we are going to give a quick update on the trades, as well as talking about LeBron and recent trade rumors, and in the second segment, we are going to talk about Doc Rivers and him being selected as the All-Stars head coach for the Eastern Conference. And then we're going to, in the third segment, we're going to look at Stephen Curry scoring 60 points and seeing what the Warriors should do with their roster, if they should move on from Klay Thompson, if they should move on from Draymond Green, things of that nature. So before I begin with this segment, I'd like to remind everyone, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. Make sure you go to the following link that is in the description below, as well as displayed in the ticker. The link is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. So once again, the link is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And without further ado, we can begin with the first segment, which will be talking about trade rumors. So obviously, the biggest name on the trade block now is LeBron. But before I get into LeBron, there was a quick update recently that happened 20 minutes ago, actually, with the Chicago Bulls and how they're allegedly looking to trade DeMar DeRozan before this trade deadline. And if they don't, then they are going to allow him to walk in free agency. And this news came after we find out the status of Zach LaVine, who will undergo surgery going into he'll undergo season-ending surgery, which will sideline him for the rest of the season, meaning that he is not available in the trade block. So I told you the Bulls were going to hold on to them eventually, but this right now definitely changes like the Bulls and like their standings. Obviously, it doesn't seem like they're going to be on the winning side of the Eastern Conference, so we have to wait until next year, or we have to wait to see what they can get out of DeMar DeRozan if they are successful in trading him. Now, Zach LaVine's sitting out. Obviously, that will hurt the team, but I find it very funny that he chose to have surgery right after there were rumors about him being traded to the Pistons. He must not want to go to the Pistons. So, but anyways, on to the main story, which is going to be about LeBron James being in trade talks. Now, love him or hate him, you can't escape him. His voice is always going to be in media. You can never escape him. And this is the first time in a while, or even for his entire career from what I can remember, that LeBron has even been in trade talks. And I am absolutely flabbergasted at LeBron being in trade talks. And hold on, there's a little bit problem with the audio. It's really loud. Okay, there we go. So LeBron being in trade talks is obviously, like, it's uncharted waters. It's brand new territory. Like, why? Why trade LeBron? That's the first question. His name never gets brought up in trade talks. He's never requested a trade. He's never wanted to get... I mean, we've obviously seen him want to get out of situations, but he never goes, like, the trade route. He never does that. He always decides to sign in free agency. He never trades. And obviously, like, my first question is, why? Why trade LeBron, and why not trade Anthony Davis? Well, the Lakers wouldn't trade Anthony Davis simply because he's younger, and he tends to be more injury prone, so being able to find value from someone who's injury prone isn't all that easy. So LeBron, while he might be the oldest player in the league, still has a lot of value. So there's still a chance that the Lakers could use Anthony Davis in the future, assuming he doesn't get seriously hurt, like I mentioned before. So far, both of those players actually haven't been that bad with injuries recently. And these trade talks, I find it kind of funny how these trade talks start circulating the second the Lakers beat the Celtics at home without those two players. Like, the media was so quick to question the media was so quick to asking this question and making it seem like LeBron was the reason why this team was losing, and it was unbelievable. Like, it was the second that they won, they were like, "Oh, should LeBron get traded?" And I'm like, what? Just because LeBron's teammates have a good game for like one game doesn't mean that like they're going to consistently perform better without him in the entire season. Like, look at the last game that they played. They just beat the Knicks, coming off of a 9-game winning streak with the help of LeBron and Anthony Davis. They might be, the Knicks might, like, they might have an injured roster, like not having Julius Randle or OG Anunoby, but still, the Knicks have proven that they don't need Randle all that much and that they can continue to win and find other means to win. OG's defense, like, might be important in terms of getting some stops for the Knicks, so that he might be a little bit more important on that side of the ball. And guess what? Like, the Lakers won, but it wasn't because of Austin Reeves or any other of the bench players. Like, they all did their part, but it was because of LeBron. He played 40 minutes again. Like, Jesus, he's the oldest player in the league, and he has to play 40 minutes. And it's ridiculous how he has to play all those minutes in a single game. Not to mention the new 65-game rule, which he's most likely trying to stay eligible for so he can get his incentives. I totally understand how the Celtics have this, like, huge advantage at home. But, I mean, like, come on. It is one good game from the Lakers without LeBron. And we should not... One good game from all of them should not cause us to jump to these conclusions to immediately trade him. One good game from these guys should not make us jump to that conclusions. This is almost unheard of. Like, nobody would ever in their right mind say trade LeBron. In fact, LeBron's agent said himself that he wasn't going to get traded, but the rumor was obviously still circulating. So it might, and like the running joke around it is that, like, we all know the joke of LeBron being a GM. His nickname is LeGM. And so the thought of him getting traded is sort of crazy given that he is LeGM, and that is sort of the joke that the media has portrayed around him. Unless he actually wants to get traded away from LA, I'm not sure if that trade will happen. And it's just how it goes. The joke around it is that, like, he makes the lineups, he does the coaching decisions, he does it all. That's LeGM, that's LeCoach, that's LeBron, that's the joke around him. And at times it seems like he really does do all these things, but obviously the organization has much more power over him and can still make that decision if they want to. So, if, and that is a very, very big if they do end up trading LeBron, what would be the teams willing to trade for him? What would be good fits for him? And what exactly is his value? So let's think about this. So I'll start with the value part, since that's always, like, really difficult to scale, especially with LeBron. It's so difficult to scale LeBron's value now in the league than it was back then. Not because he isn't valuable, but because how long can he maintain this value? So again, LeBron is the oldest player in the NBA. So your window of winning a title is probably going to be very small. Could get smaller if he gets injury prone. So there most likely will be picks coming in from the Lakers side to compensate for LeBron's age, but at the same time, it's LeBron. If you're giving up LeBron, you are already giving up a lot of pieces because he is LeBron. The picks should probably be going, like, to the Lakers, actually, because of how valuable LeBron is. And like I said, it's very, very, very difficult to scale LeBron's value given his age. It's also dependent on what team already has, what the team already has, and their picks and their status around the league. One of the biggest teams that that's actually a suitor, ironically, is the team that he just beat, which is the Knicks. So LeBron said that he has considered being a Knick at some point in his career, and they have the pieces, to trade away while at the same time retaining a strong lineup to be able to compete in the top-heavy Eastern Conference. And, I mean, it's LeBron. So the minute you have LeBron on your team, you should be competing regardless. Unless you're the Lakers front office and how they've been managing LeBron. I swear to God, the Lakers front office has done a horrible job managing LeBron's prime and managing all the years that they've had with LeBron. Because 3 times they've missed the playoffs, that's 3 times too many. That is inexcusable when you have LeBron in your prime. And another thing that I mentioned how the Knicks are like in potential trade talks. It would be really funny if Julius Randle ends up being in that trade discussion and returns to his former team, like how D'Angelo Russell returns from his former team. That would be so hilarious. But in my personal opinion, the Knicks, they shouldn't trade for him. I don't think the Knicks should trade for him. I mean, obviously he would be a great help, but depending on who you give up and depending on who you get, I'm not entirely sure if the Knicks should trade them. The Knicks already have a great team, and the chemistry surrounding that team and what they have going right now, I don't think that should be touched. I think that should just be left alone, and they should just keep playing basketball. They should keep trying to play their ball the way they love it, and as a result, the winning is going to happen, and it's going to continue happening. Despite the loss to Los Angeles, they have shown nothing but great basketball for once in like what it feels like a century and what it feels like decades. The Knicks are actually good at basketball. I can't believe I'm talking about how good the Knicks actually are and that they shouldn't trade to get LeBron. I can't believe that we've come to a time like this. Not to mention that the Knicks still don't have Randall or OG Anunoby. So I'm not the biggest Randall fan, but I'm not going to act like he doesn't bring value to the team. Nor am I going to deny that the team's chemistry with him is much greater. So when you have him on the floor, obviously your team is going to get a boost in all sorts of production. So not having him on the floor and also not having OG on the floor definitely could have contributed to losing to the Lakers. I'm not entirely sure if the Lakers would want to trade for Randall in the first place and a couple of picks or other members in the lineup, but like I recently did a trade proposal like on the trade website where like you could filter in your own trades and see if they work. And if they wanted to get LeBron, they'd probably also have to give up a player like Precious or Mitchell Robinson in order for them to like meet the criterias and whatnot, in order for it to be fair, for lack of a better term. Now, while this trade might have gone through, I still don't think the Knicks should give up that much just to have 2 guaranteed years of LeBron James. I'm not entirely sure if that's a risk I would want to take. It's a really risky move given the chemistry that is being built around the team and the culture surrounding it, not to mention all the media attention and all the drama that's going to come in when you are LeBron's team, because that's essentially what you become once LeBron joins your team. You become LeBron's team. The cameras are like they're on you the most. There's a lot of pressure, and then they have to handle being a Knick, which is even more pressure given how every single home game you play, everyone is going to try to give you their A game. Every team tries to bring in their best night at the Garden. Constantly playing teams that are constantly trying to like kick your ass isn't easy for teams to like maintain. Like you're playing 100% every single time down the court, and obviously you know that's what's expected. But sometimes it's like these games, like sometimes these games that don't necessarily mean that much. Some players have a little bit of breathing room, or that's how they like to see it as. The Knicks don't get any of that, and if you add LeBron to that, then you will not get any breathing room whatsoever. You will be open to all sorts of criticisms from media and all sorts of outlets because the lights are constantly shining on you. And granted, LeBron probably deals with all of this all the time, so maybe it is a good fit if he does go to the Knicks, given all the bright lights. But personally, I wouldn't like it, and I'd actually like to see him go back to the Cavs. And they are a great team, and they don't necessarily have to give up much to get him. Trading either away Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell will work, and LeBron would still have a good team around the Cavs as well as a great guard alongside him to be able to keep that offensive production going when he's sitting down. Probably even get compared to Wade and Kyrie if that does happen, just because, that's what they do. That's what the media does. I feel like this trade would make a lot of people happy. A lot of Laker fans don't want LeBron, and they also get a good guard to go alongside Anthony Davis, so it's not like they wouldn't be able to compete. Their defense might fall off just a little bit, but with AD's presence in the paint, it would still be difficult. It would still be difficult, or it would definitely be impactful. Pardon me, for Anthony Davis's presence in the paint, and the defense might struggle on the perimeter, but paint defense is arguably the most important type of defense in this league right now. Depending on the other pieces, to the team that they would decide to trade between either Strus, Evan Mobley, or Dean Wade, I could see this trade as a win-win. Obviously, all of this is hypothetical because I don't think the Lakers would trade LeBron. LeBron immediately makes teams a playoff team, unless you are the Lakers and their front office, as I mentioned before. Still can't believe how they've been wasting I wasted his time. But I digress. And how I said, the Knicks are a competitive team. So are the Cavs. The Cavs have been winning their games without Garland, and they just got Garland back now after an injury. So trading him or Donovan away could potentially sour the rest of the players because of the chemistry that they have. Similar to how trading away Isaiah Thomas definitely gave a lot of the Celtics on the team a lot of unease, because while it is a business, it's wow, you really traded away someone who was doing this for your franchise and all that kind of stuff. And granted, they might not be mad when they find out that they're playing with LeBron, but that might also bring more pressure onto a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Knicks are a bit different because they have to deal with the media notoriety and the intense home court. That's just the pressure of being a Knick and, all the tourists that come in. That's just what it happens. But the Cavs being a much less known team, unless LeBron's on the team, that media attention might get in their heads. As Jared Allen said before, the lights might be too bright. So I don't think LeBron will get traded to either the Knicks or the Cavs. I don't see it happening. His agent said it won't happen. He said it won't happen. So if he says it won't happen, then it most likely won't happen unless he requests a trade, which he said he wasn't going to do. So we'll see how well the Lakers do going into the rest of the season with LeBron on the team, and we'll see if they can make noise. But with that, we are done with our first segment, so be sure to tune into the next segment where I talk about Doc Rivers being named the Eastern All-Stars head coach right after this short break. I will be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this next segment, we are going to talk about Doc Rivers being named Eastern All-Stars head coach after only winning one game for the Bucks. But before I begin with that segment and ripping on Doc Rivers, I'd like to remind you guys to, as always, please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is displayed just below the ticker and also in the description. The link is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. So once again, that link is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And without further ado, let's go into the second segment where we talk about Doc Rivers being selected as the head coach for the Eastern All-Stars. So with the All-Star lineups being announced, obviously, the coaches are going to follow suit eventually, and they're going to be announced eventually. Doc Rivers, who only coached 4 games up to this point, and just won only once in a comeback against Dallas, has been named the Eastern All-Stars head coach. Doc Rivers, once he found out about the news, quoted saying, "This is ridiculously bad." Yes, this is Doc himself saying this. He can't even believe he was chosen for the position. So, obviously, we all know that the Bucks fired their former head coach, Adrian Griffin. He went 30-12 through the season. So, why did he get fired? What's the reason? Why did he get fired? Was it the offense? Was it the defense? Their defensive rating has definitely tanked this year compared to previous years. But that's what happens when you have someone like Damian Lillard on the roster. Now, obviously, Dame, great basketball player, great on the offense, but he's a terrible defender. I've said this once, and I'll say it again, said it many times on this podcast. It's one of the many overlooked reasons as to why Portland hasn't been able to make a deep playoff run outside of 2019. And with the Bucks, it's actually even worse. The Bucks are really, really bad at defending the pick and roll. Brook Lopez plays really low on the screen, and in an era right now where a bunch of teams are taking a bunch of three-pointers, that is not ideal because the teams can easily come off the screen and then immediately shoot the dribble pull-up since Brook Lopez is playing so down low on the screen. It's a shot that Dame actually hits, and it's one of his signature shots that I've seen him hit all the time. Now the rest of the league is doing it on him. This is a problem because when the Bucks didn't have Dame, it's just his defense is that it's much worse. Like, this wasn't a problem when they didn't have Dame because Drew Holiday was a pretty competent defender. His IQ on the defensive side of the ball is definitely much greater than Dame's IQ on the defensive side of the ball. And it wasn't that much worse because they were able to recover a lot quicker. Damian Lillard, with his size and with how big the screens are on him, it's very difficult for him to recover through that screen, thus giving open looks almost every single time. They allow so many open looks because of this. It's unreal. And with the amount of open looks that they allow, it makes sense how they end up losing a lot of these games in a lot of comeback wins from the other team. Just like how it happened last night where the Bucks lost to the Utah Jazz in a comeback win. The Utah Jazz came back all the way down, and as they would say, as the haters would say, Doc Rivers is in playoff mode. But they allowed so many looks in the paint, but most of them being because of pick and rolls. They ran zone a couple of times, which seemed to be working for them, but overall their defense has been really weak. The other problem with in the lineup might be how the players are utilized on the offensive side of the ball and their spacing. Sometimes Giannis would be posted up or standing on the weak side wing, which is quite literally the worst spot for him to be standing on the court because he can't shoot. Now, he can shoot. Like, I'm not trying to discredit his shooting abilities or any of his abilities on the offensive end. I think he definitely can shoot, but from out there, he cannot shoot to the point where like any defender is going to be scared of him from all the way out there. So when he is out there and somebody else, like let's say Dame, has the ball, that gives Damian Lillard a lot less room to operate since Giannis's man is going to constantly keep hedging and going to constantly just ignore him since Giannis is out on the three-point line. So it's like it's ridiculous help, and like it shrinks the floor. And that's something that you can't allow when you have Damian Lillard on the team. They also have the tendency to overcrowd the weak side baseline. This just makes it a lot easier for one defender to guard two, which allows the defense to send double teams and whatnot, all those kinds of things. I personally think it should be Giannis running the pick and roll with him instead of Brook Lopez, and Brook Lopez goes ahead and spots up. They usually run a pick and roll with Brook Lopez being the center, which I just don't agree with. I feel like he should be the spot up in that situation just to space the floor, and because of how good Giannis is at actually finishing at the rim. Even with all of this and all of these issues that I mentioned, the open looks that they were giving up, the offensive struggles, the indecisiveness on the team, they're still top 2 in the Eastern Conference. So why exactly was he fired? Because if you're winning, then there's absolutely no need for the organization to fire you, especially if it means that they're going to take in Doc Rivers. And look at what Doc Rivers is doing right now. He's 1-4 as the Bucks head coach, and he just recently lost to the Utah Jazz, who, might I remind you, the Utah Jazz lost to the Philadelphia 76ers without Embiid. So losing to the Utah Jazz is a big problem for the Bucks, and it really shows like just how bad Doc Rivers is how incompetent Doc Rivers is as a coach. I'm going to use that word because the adjustments he makes zero. He made zero adjustments in that fourth quarter, which led to that comeback, and it is infuriating to watch. Now, it might be a mix of bad luck, but it can't be bad luck all the time because it happens all the time with Doc Rivers. So, anyways, back to why Adrian Griffin was fired. So, there was speculation around the media that he lost his job because he was talking bad about Giannis's brother Thanasis. Now, forgive me if I missaid that name or misspoke that name. It's very difficult to pronounce both of their names. Now, any normal man who wants his job doesn't talk trash to Giannis's brother. No matter how bad or how inconsistent he is at the game, you don't talk about Giannis's brothers. You don't do that. And he messed himself up, in my personal opinion, with this alleged insult to Thanasis. The reports don't explicitly say what he said, just that he wasn't speaking very highly of him. He messed himself up. If it's the truth, then why did it lead to him losing his job? Like, if his statements are true, why did it lead to him losing his job, you might ask? Giannis is probably one of the nicest, the kindest souls in the NBA. Whatever he does, he doesn't do it for himself. He does it for his family. That's always in his mind, his family. And the money he and his brother makes are most likely going back to the family in some amount. So Giannis making sure that his brothers are making money is like he is indirectly giving more money to his family. So that's exactly what brothers do. They look out for each other. And Giannis was just looking out for his brother, who was getting criticized by his very own head coach. So Thanasis is one of the fan favorites for the Bucks. He might not deliver much for the team in terms of production, but he does go out there. He plays with a lot of heart. He's one of the worst players to have, however, in my personal opinion. Thanasis has the same dynamic as LeBron James Jr. So in college, so far, Bronny James has not been performing that well, but he's expected to be drafted number 1 because LeBron really wants to play for his son. So you get Bronny, you get LeBron James. So this is the exact same dynamic that Giannis has with his brother now. So with that in mind, the dumbest thing you could do in that situation is insult Giannis's brother. That is the biggest no-no in every single handbook. Insulting Giannis or his brother, that wasn't in the manual last time I checked. So Giannis, however, he denied, because he's so nice, he denied any type of accusations of this nature, saying that he loved the guy, quote unquote, but based on the vibes that the bench was giving off, the bench was literally dancing after he got fired. So based off of that and all the other and the happiness that's been surrounding the locker room now, I don't think they loved the guy. Me personally, I don't think they particularly loved the guy. Now, some people might be asking, why did Doc Rivers get this position if he doesn't deserve it? Because like I mentioned earlier, he's 1-3 or 1-4 in the standings he's only won one game as the Bucks head coach. So, and in the most recent game that he lost in a comeback win from the Utah Jazz. So, why was he even selected? Why was this just given to him? So the reason why this was given to him was because the Eastern All-Stars head coach was the Boston Celtics head coach. He was the head coach for the Eastern All-Stars lineup last year. So because of this, Boston's head coach has become ineligible for the spot. And I think that's a relatively dumb rule. Like, so what if you've had a winning record last season? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to participate or coach the Eastern All-Stars. I understand that they want to give other coaches the incentives, but if the other coaches aren't doing it like the Celtics coaches, then it's just giving it to someone for the sake of giving the award to someone. And what about giving it to the coach for the Knicks, or the coach for the Cavs, or the coach for the Sixers? If it's going to be handed out based on team success, then at least be consistent with it, because as I mentioned earlier, Doc has only won one game with this team. So why not give it to any of these other coaches who I feel definitely deserve it for how they've turned their franchises around? Doc hasn't had any success with this team yet. Since Doc doesn't even feel like he deserves the role, he decides that he's going to give his ring and his incentives to Adrian Griffin, since he legitimately does deserve that award, which is always such a kind gesture, and it's definitely the right move to do. The former coach deserves it for the job he did. And as for the West, we have no idea what coach has been. No coach has been chosen yet. I guess since all the teams in the West are relatively close with each other, they're having a difficult time choosing which head coach should be the coach for the Western Conference. But I personally think it should be Tyronn Lue. We'll find out who they go with, but I personally think Tyronn Lue should be the one to be the head coach for the Western Conference. He coached LeBron, who is the captain of the All-Star team, and he's also coached several different All-Star teams. So even though a lot of All-Star games are just for players to have fun and do cool dunks and shoot deep threes, obviously the coach matters in this type of sense. So with that, we are out of time for the second segment. I talked a lot about LeBron in both of these segments, so we're going to pivot and talk about his most notorious rival, Stephen Curry, and what the Golden State Warriors should expect in the future and what they should do moving on. Right after this short break, I will be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Hold on, there we go. Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As I mentioned before in the previous segment, we are going to talk about Stephen Curry and what the Golden State Warriors should look into doing going into the trade deadline and going into the season. Now, the reason why I brought up this is because the games over this weekend have been very, very hectic. Also, quick update on Joel Embiid and his injury. He will undergo a procedure, on his meniscus injury, and after the procedure, it will give all of us a better idea of when he will return. So I personally think he's going to be deactivated for the entire season, but we will see going into the future. And before I get into Stephen Curry, I just have one question for all of you. Did you see my Nets? Did you see those Brooklyn Nets out there? Did you see him? Did you see him? Cam Thomas had 40 points last night. That is not last night, 2 nights ago. That was absolutely beautiful. Great stuff from him. We all know how good he is at basketball. He was getting compared to Michael Jordan in scoring. Like, being compared to Michael Jordan in scoring is just goated levels of play. Obviously, he is an absolute bucket. Can't forget about Miles Bridges either. He dropped 23 points as well. Lonnie Walker also wanted to get in on the show too, dropping 20 points in a great win for the Nets over this weak Philly team that is still trying to figure it out with Joel Embiid being gone. It is just a beautiful day over there in New York right now. I mean, obviously, you know, boo-hoo for the Knicks and losing, but let's go Nets! That's exactly what we needed. The real problem were the pieces in the starting lineup for the Sixers. Kelly Oubre was horrible that night, and Maxey was just chucking up a bunch of shots because he was scared not having Embiid, and the shot attempts were like, he had as many points as shot attempts, 23 for 23. No disrespect to Tyrese Maxey or any of those players. Obviously, they are great players. You know that. But I am a Brooklyn Nets fan, and we beat them. We stomped them out of that arena. Yes, sir. They have figured it out. But I bet they wish they had Ben Simmons now. Speaking of Ben Simmons, let me just be upset for a minute. He had 0 points. Yes, 0 points against Philly, and he wanted to talk on the media saying things like, I got grown men crying in the stands. Like, shush! Don't talk! You had 0 points, and you played 14 minutes. Shush! Please get him off my team. Please! But I digress. That's me being a fan. Now let's go move on to the main segment of the show, which is Stephen Curry dropping 60 points and losing. Now, I can guarantee you LeBron is somewhere in a corner screaming, that's how it feels, because this is the most points that I've seen Curry score in a loss. This is the 3rd time in the last 2 weeks that an NBA player has dropped 60 points or more and ended up losing. Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker are the other 2 players, as you can remember if I covered them in previous podcasts. To put this stat in ridiculous perspective, from 2010 to 2023, there have been 4 players to score 60 and lose. And those 4 players, like one of them is Devin Booker, one of them is Damian Lillard, but there have been 4 players to score that many points and still end up in the loss. So we have 3 players do that in the span of 2 weeks. This season has been absolutely insane in terms of scoring. This is the first instance where Curry actually looks like the only good player on his team and the only person who can do anything offensively on that team. Like, the previous games, as I mentioned before, as a LeBron fan, actually, before I get into it, as a LeBron fan, I'm smiling super hard because this is the first time in a while where he's doing whatever he can and he can't get anything to work. This is something that LeBron has had to deal with every single time, both in his career and going against his stacked teams. And the talk from the fans saying Curry is better than him just irks me. Absolutely irks me, but I digress. Trae Young went off this game with 35 points, showing everyone why he deserves to be an all-star. He is most likely to be an all-star since Joel and Julius Randle are injured. I have a feeling that he and Scotty Barnes will replace the both of them in the all-star game, but we will see how that goes. As I mentioned before, the other players that had to deal with scoring 60 and losing were Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker. Now, Karl Anthony Towns lost because his team was being immature that night, letting him constantly score, and at the end he couldn't close out because he was just chucking up a bunch of shots. Devin Booker lost because his team just couldn't do enough and they weren't showing up while he was doing everything. So, why did Curry lose? I will blame it on 2 things. 1, DeJounte Murray. He didn't have a great night, the entirety of the night, but he hit his shots when they needed him to hit his shots in overtime. And my inner LeBron fan in me is dying to say, oh, they lost because Steph Curry wasn't clutch and he can't close out, which might be true, but he did force the game into overtime. And that isn't the second reason why Steph Curry ended up losing. I'm not going to rip him a new one because obviously he sent the game into overtime, so he has to be clutch in order to send the game into overtime. Not going to say that he's not, and because that would just be disrespectful. But the second reason is actually Klay Thompson. So far this year, Klay Thompson has been anything but his usual self on both the offense and the defensive side of the ball. The only thing that Klay has going for him is that he can still flex that he has 4 rings. But his shooting, it's been the worst so far. This has been the worst he's ever shot this year from 3. And it's also the worst he's ever shot this year from the field in his entire career. And that is a clear problem because Klay's defense isn't as strong as what it used to be before his injury. So now that he doesn't have his defense, he needs to be able to hit on offense and he needs to be able to be efficient from the 3-point line. This isn't the same Klay Thompson that I feared all of those years before. He played 36 minutes last game and shot 4 of 19 for only 10 points. And he shot 2 of 13 from 3. That is not ideal if you're someone like Klay Thompson. Taking so many shots and wasting those possessions costed them the game. Curry literally had to do everything on his team. And his team ended up selling him, which is the only reason why he lost. He had to do everything on this team, and the team just couldn't perform. If Klay would have hit a few more threes, they would have won this game. They most definitely would have won this game. Klay has been really inconsistent shooter for the Warriors recently, and a lot of people are questioning if the Warriors should move on from him, seeing as he's just chucking up a bunch of threes and not making them. Draymond has also been thrown into the mix as one of the people that should be traded from Golden State, and this talk wondering if their time in Golden State is actually coming to an end. With all of this talk, we don't know if their time is coming to an end. I personally think the Warriors are going to keep these players and they're going to make them retire for their franchise because they gave them 4 championships, and that's just what they're going to do. That's just the right thing to do. So like all the athletes that give you a title and that give you that chance of being at the top. I personally think like that they're going to keep those 3 players. But on the other hand, Curry is still playing some of his best basketball. And now we're seeing like his talents get wasted. Kind of like LeBron. So now he knows exactly how it feels. And with Jonathan Kuminga being on the rise right now, maybe now is the time to move on from one of your former star options to help build the team and to help give Curry some help. Because the goal every year is to win. So they have the pieces to trade away. Why not trade them away and give Curry valuable teammates? Well, the big 3 when they play together since 2021 are 36 and 34. However, when Curry plays with just Draymond and with Klay out, they are 33 and 8. So, once again, this shows the amazing value that Draymond Green actually provides for the team. So if you're Golden State and you're thinking of trading away anyone, don't let it be Draymond. Because that stat single-handedly proves his value. Being 33 and 8 with Stephen Curry and without having Klay Thompson is incredible for Draymond, and it really shows his production. The numbers don't lie. Draymond might not put up valuable numbers, but his value cannot be denied. No matter what the casual haters say, no matter how they interpret his points, his production, he is valuable, and it is proven time in and time out. So if there is anyone on the team that the Warriors should consider moving on from, it's probably going to be Klay Thompson. Him jacking up a bunch of threes the way he does just wastes possessions, in my opinion. And when they could be doing something else with the ball, like how I mentioned earlier, giving it to Kuminga. Ever since he called out Steve Kerr for not getting enough playing time, he's gotten his playing time, and he's been proven to be a total success. His overall production is improved tremendously for the team, proving that he can be an extremely valuable asset on the offensive side of the ball. And it's like he scores when he wants, and it's honestly really fun to watch. So with that in mind, I personally think that they should look into trading Klay Thompson, simply because of those of the numbers that I mentioned to you earlier, with Draymond Green and Stephen Curry in the rotation. You have a winning lineup with both of those guys in the rotation, because that's his pick and roll buddy. And with both of those guys in that lineup, you end up winning a bunch more games. So I personally feel like this is, if they are going to trade anyone, they should trade Klay Thompson. But I'm going to go ahead and quickly look at the standings real quick, just to see where Golden State is right now, because the Western Conference standings, they love to flip-flop all the time. Right now, they are completely out of playoff contention. So maybe since they are out of playoff contention, they might decide to keep their pieces just so they could keep them for the season, and then maybe get rid of them, see if they want to retire. I don't think they'd want to retire, but see if they want to go to another team and accommodate those needs. But I personally, right now, it doesn't look like Golden State's going to be really in a position to win. And I personally don't think, with how stacked this Western Conference is, I think now maybe they should hold off and wait until the next season. However, if they could get a very, very good, valuable player by only trading away one piece of their team, which is Klay Thompson, then I think they should do it and see how it comes out. But it'll be really tough seeing Klay Thompson in a different uniform. It'll also be really tough seeing Draymond in a different uniform if that ends up happening, because those big three have been together since 2014, 2015. They've been through everything together, and it's going to be really tough seeing them all go. A little update on the Golden State Warriors and their schedule. They're going up against my Brooklyn Nets. My Brooklyn Nets are favorited to winning because we are at home. So hopefully Stephen Curry just doesn't go off for 60 points again, because our defense is notoriously mid. So hopefully we can hold off on Stephen Curry, and Cam Thomas can drop him and score all of the points he needs, along with Mikal Bridges and all of those players. Hopefully they all have a great game, and hopefully, please, I hope that Ben Simmons can have a great game. And if he doesn't, I just want him off my team. That's what I really want. Just get him away, please. But with that, and before I go into another episode of crying, we are out of time for this third segment, so tune in for the fourth segment, where I talk about the NBA power rankings that have just been announced this morning. So tune in after this short break. I will be right back. And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. So in this fourth segment, we are going to be looking at the power rankings. But before I do that, let's look at where they were and what I think should be moved first. And after I'm done with that, I'm going to pull up the power rankings on my computer and pull them up on the screen so that way everyone can see and just see how accurate we are and to see, see how accurate I am and to see if my predictions are correct. But first, we will go and we will see and look at the power rankings that were of last week, which I have right now. So the power rankings as of last week are 1 Clippers, 2 Boston, 3 Denver, 4 Philly, 5 OKC, 6 the Bucks, 7 the Wolves, 8 the Knicks, 9 the Suns, and 10 the Cavs. So we'll start with the Clippers. They started this week losing to the Cavs, and they did beat the Miami Heat to end the week. So I don't really think that they deserve to be moved down in the power rankings. They might move down 1 simply because of that loss of the Cavs because they are a good team. And their recent wins, like the 2 other teams that they beat other than the Miami Heat, were the Wizards and the Pistons, the 2 worst teams in the Eastern Conference. So obviously, I believe 1 or 2 would be a good spot for the Clippers. Now, moving on to the Celtics. The Celtics are definitely dropping. They have to drop after losing to the Lakers without LeBron and Anthony Davis. They have to drop, like from maybe 3 to 4. That's where they're going right now. Even with that loss, however, they're still a really good team. We've seen it throughout the year. They remain in the number 1 spot in the Eastern Conference. So maybe going down by 1 is a little bit harsh given that they're still going to be number 1. But still, that was a really bad loss, and it's a really concerning loss for them. But moving on, the third team, the Denver Nuggets. I think that Denver is going to move up all the way to number 1 because the only game that they lost was to OKC, and they lost by 5 without having Nikola Jokic. So with that in mind, they should move all the way up to either 1 or 2. And given their last game recently where they beat Portland, they only lost to OKC, definitely should be moved up to either 1 or the 2 spot. One or the other. They also came back against the Bucks on Monday to win the game in the end. So I believe in these rankings they'll move up by 1. I don't think Philly is going to remain in this top 10 whatsoever. They beat Utah without Embiid, but other than that, they haven't won a single game. And Utah is relatively mid. So no disrespect to Utah whatsoever, but they are in the mid-tier of the Western Conference. So with that in mind, I think they're going to drop out of the top 10 entirely. The Thunder are probably going to stay the same because of Philly not being in the power rankings, but I think they should move down by like 1 or 2 slots to go to like 6th or 7th. Shai is in the running for MVP given how he drops 31 every single night. But the rest of the team seems to be a lot more inconsistent than what I thought. The Bucks, I feel, they should definitely move back down to either 7 or 8 because Doc Rivers has only won 1 game for them, and he hasn't shown anything new to this Bucks organization, and I think it's going to hurt them come playoff time. So they should be 7 or 8 right now, and even with all of this, they're still second in the East. Still a lot of time to fix this, but as of right now, 7 or 8 would be a great spot for them. They've really been struggling, and Dame has really been struggling, and they really need to fix this before after the All-Star break. The Wolves are most likely going to move up to 6 or 5 given their win against the Mavs and the Thunder. They did lose to the Magic in a relatively close game, so we will see if they'll change it because of that. The Knicks are going to move up all the way to the top. They're going to take Philly's spot in the rankings, and they're going to be like top 5. I wouldn't be surprised. They've been phenomenal, and they've been on a 9-game winning streak right now, getting big wins this last week against every single team, all without Julius Randle, except for the one time they did lose was to the Lakers. But again, no Julius Randle, no OG Anunoby. Doesn't matter. I think they should move all the way up to the top 5. I said it in the beginning, Julius Randle wasn't that much of an important piece to the Knicks. So far, I've been right that entire step of the way. Sure, Halliburton was on minutes restriction, but there was also no OG, as I mentioned before. That is what good teams do. If what they usually do isn't working, they try to impact the game in other ways to change the outcome given if the offense isn't showing up. The Suns are going to be the only team that doesn't move in the rankings, in my personal opinion. They lost to the Hawks, but they beat the Heat, and they also beat the Wizards after Bradley Beal dropped his 43 points. But they beat the Heat. They beat the Heat, and they beat the Nets. But we don't have to talk about them beating the Nets, obviously. Like, you guys know how I feel about that. The Cavs beat the Clippers to start the week without Darius Garland, and Kawhi ending the game with 30. So I believe that they're going to get a massive boost in the rankings, jumping all the way down from 10 to like 6 or 7. So with that, top 10 out of the way, let's actually go ahead and open up these power rankings themselves. As you could see from the TV screen, they've recently been updated 52 minutes ago. So I'm going to go ahead and open this page up and see just how accurate we are with these teams and to see where they stand. So let's see. Number 1 is probably going to be the Clippers, isn't it? Yep. Number 1 is the Clippers. There's no surprises there whatsoever. Obviously, like, you can read the rest of these. You could see their offensive rating, you could see their defensive rating, and their overall team record over this. But obviously, I have no disagreements with the Clippers being number 1 whatsoever. They're a great team, but as I said earlier, have to see it in the playoffs. So can't determine their championship aspirations right now. Have to see them do this in the playoffs. Now, let's move on to the next team. Boston Celtics, they haven't moved down whatsoever. So I guess moving them down simply because of that loss without Anthony Davis, and they mention it right here. I guess moving them down by that much, it was a little bit harsh. So I guess with that in mind, then the Nuggets aren't going to move up whatsoever. They're going to stay at 3. Yep. The Nuggets are staying at 3. Obviously, so far, no disagreements whatsoever with this list. Below them was Philly. So we'll go ahead and see if the Knicks would have replaced that spot, or which team has replaced that spot. They moved the Timberwolves up there instead. So the Timberwolves, I guess I can't really fault that. I'd personally put the Knicks up there. That's just me, however, because of what the Knicks have been doing and how they've been on that 9-game winning streak. But the Minnesota Timberwolves did beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, who will probably be ranked right below them, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, the Oklahoma City Thunder have not moved in the standings whatsoever. So, as of right now, it doesn't really seem like a lot of teams have been moving the way I expected them to. Might be because I've been affected by recency bias, but so far the top 4, the top 5, they've been more or less what I expected, other than the Timberwolves being up there. So now this has to be the Knicks coming up, right? Oh, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been ranked higher than the Knicks, so they move up all the way to 6. So I'm not mad at this whatsoever either, because the Knicks still have pieces that they are missing, which prevent them from being ranked higher in the power rankings. So the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers have gotten Darius Garland definitely helps in the sense of where they stand in their rankings and whatnot, and all those types of things. But so far with these power rankings and this list, I see no problem with them whatsoever. And they've been going more or less like what I've expected. So next should be the Bucks. If I'm not... Oh, the Knicks are up next. Okay, so the Knicks and the Cavs are neck and neck, meaning the Bucks are moved probably all the way down to 8. So the Knicks being 7, I think it's a little low. But, I mean, I like it that they're 7 because that reminds me of Carmelo Anthony's number. So they might have just moved them to 7 just because of that. But I think they should be ranked higher than the Cavs, in my personal opinion. And they should also be ranked higher than the Timberwolves. But that's just me. I think that I might be overestimating the Knicks right now because of how good they've been playing. But once they have all their healthy pieces, I seriously think they could compete with both of those teams. Now, moving on. Yep, the Bucks are moved from 6 all the way down to 8. So, obviously the biggest problem for them was Doc Rivers. They've only won 1 game with Doc Rivers as the coach. That was off of a comeback win. So, as we could see here, we can look at the takeaways. The Bucks starting lineup outscored the Nuggets and Blazers by 18. But they ended up losing that game because the Nuggets ended up coming back. So with that in mind, Doc Rivers is just like the blowing leads with Doc Rivers. It has to stop. He always blows these leads, and it's going to hurt this team come playoff time. I guarantee you it will. But I digress. Now, the Suns, I was right. They were the team that stayed the exact same. They stayed at 9. Nothing has changed with them, even with all the teams that they beat. They've been relatively the exact same team throughout the last week. So now the last team is Philadelphia. Philadelphia is still in the top 10, but just barely in the top 10. So let me go ahead and see. Oh, the Kings are creeping up on them right now. I think the Kings are going to take over the spot and make it into the top 10. That's my personal opinion, but those are the power rankings in the top 10. Actually, you know what? Why don't we'll go over one more. Why not? The Pelicans. The Pelicans are ranked 12. Okay, so I see the Pelicans like they're on the same boat as Phoenix in terms of playoff standings. Same with the Kings, but like the Kings, in my opinion, are definitely the much better team in terms of players and in terms of like everything else. I feel like Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, they were all-star snubs, and they're definitely great basketball players that could lead the team and make the team go far into the postseason. And with that in mind, I think the Kings are going to end up overtaking the Philadelphia 76ers in the standings and move in the top 10. So with that in mind, we are out of time with our show segment. And thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review in it. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us through Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again. I'm your host, Nelson. Have a wonderful day, and as always, take care.